Welcome to another episode of the D-League. Today, episode 12. We're gonna take a break from our tools series for today. And today the topic that Bilal and I will be talking about is crowdfunding. So maybe before you actually start your project, you think, how do I finance that project? It's gonna take some money. So crowdfunding has become really popular recently. And so before we go into more detail, a short description of what crowdfunding actually is. It actually means that you, as a person or a team, you are proposing a product or maybe a project, and you have other people support you by, either just kind of donating money through a crowdfunding platform, or they buy the product in advance. And if you sell a product, then most companies or persons that start a crowdfunding campaign, because it has a risk involved, they sell the product at a discounted price. So, for example, if you say, I'm going to build a laptop, in stores it will cost $600, but you get it for $450 because you take the risk of paying in advance before the product is actually developed and produced. I guess that's the gist, right, Bilal?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't add anything to that.
Yeah. So, how does crowdfunding work? If you have a project or a product, then you have a range of platforms. If it's just one product you want to sell, so let's say you have that laptop and you want to develop it, and you need, let's say, $100,000 to develop and produce. Of course, that's a bit on the smaller, lower side of the amounts. But then you can either, like, the most popular platforms are probably Kickstarter and Indiegogo right now. So everything that you actually need to do is that you create an account, and you input all your credentials, and then you prepare the offering. So most people that prepare their crowdfunding campaign, they say, okay, maybe you don't want to buy the complete laptop, you just want to support us. So then maybe you can have several tiers. So let's say the first tier is like $5, and it's just maybe an email saying thank you. And then you have a tier above where you get a USB stick for like $20 or something, and then you raise the tiers and the money that people actually pay, and then in the end you have something like one notebook or one laptop for $450, or 5 for $2,000, and so on. Of course, you need to structure that yourself, how much money you actually need. In theory, it's really easy to start a crowdfunding campaign, but I guess it's not as easy as it sounds. Of course, neither you, Bilal, nor I, we have not started a crowdfunding campaign in that sense ourselves. So it's just from our experience of reading about crowdfunding campaigns and how they became successful, or how they failed in the end, right?
I mean, to speak to like the technicals of like it being easy, I mean, I set up a Patreon, which obviously was very easy. So I mean, setting up the website is not very difficult, and like the only thing you have to worry about. I mean, I think the most difficult part is creating the video because you're not going to get funded if you don't have a video. That's just unless. I mean, for the most part, obviously, probably 95% of things that don't have a video are not going to get crowdfunded. So you'd obviously want to put effort into that, but yeah, I mean, so like we said, the technical stuff is pretty easy, but like running the campaign and making sure you're doing all the right stuff, like which platforms do you market on, and like where do you mention your crowd or your crowdfunding project. And all that stuff, like just how do you run the campaign is the difficult part because like there's so much different stuff to do, and it's very hard to know which things to do. Especially since like the analytics aren't there or anything, you kind of have to look through examples and be smart to fund your project on something like Kickstarter, I think. But yeah, I think. It's definitely not difficult to start in the first place.
Yeah. I guess also you need to know what is a reasonable amount. Of course, you could ask for $1 million, but if you are a complete no-name, then people will probably not buy your product because one thing I need to explain real quick is that on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you have two different systems how you can set up your campaign. You can either set the campaign to only give you the raised amount of cash if it actually reaches the final target. So, for example, if you asked for $100,000 for the laptop and you raised $150,000, then you met the target. Then you get the money, of course, without fees. We will talk about that in a moment. And but if you only raised $95,000 instead of the $100,000. Then you would not get any money. Everyone would get refunded, and so there would be no fees as well. So for the user that is, or for the backer, for the backer of your project, if in this case, if the target amount is not reached, the backer gets back all the money that he kind of invested in your project.
Yeah,
and
that was required on Kickstarter, though. I think I'm not sure on that, but that's what my understanding was because I've never seen a project, or at least I remember reading the terms. I thought that was like if it didn't get to its goal, then the money was always refunded. But I don't know if that's true or not. Actually, no.
I'm not 100% sure about Kickstarter, but there is a different system where even. Like if you ask for $100,000 and you only reach $95,000, then there is a system that pays out the money raised to the person or the team handling the crowdfunding campaign, even though the target was not met. So I think that's called a flexible crowdfunding. So you have either a set amount of money that needs to be raised, at least, so the money gets paid, and then you have the flexible crowdfunding system where maybe they just raised $100, then they actually get $100. Of course, then. I guess that one is less popular. Like you said, you didn't even know it existed on Kickstarter. So if you back early, so let's say they need $100,000 and they just the campaign just started and it's at $5,000. then if you back that early and it's flexible funding, then that means as a backer, the earlier you back the project, the more risky it actually is. I mean, if it's at $99,000, yeah, then you buy a laptop, then it's nearly funded. So even if they don't get the $500 left, they probably don't care. They will just throw the $500, or they will invest the $500 themselves from their own cash, I guess.
Yeah, actually,
So
you know,
yes, sir.
there were some scandals actually where people would fund their own Kickstarters. So I don't think it might not be an option on Kickstarter because that that happens. So it's like when people fund their own Kickstarters just to complete the rest of it, so that they get the money that existed. So that's something that happens. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
It's probably like an Indiegogo exclusive, but I think I think it's pretty interesting that would happen. Like that's why like with something with Kickstarter, it's not only because you might not reach the goal and get that much money. Like when you set a goal, you want it to be something that will be achieved because that makes the whole thing look better in terms of marketing, especially so if you actually reach your goal, then everybody's like, oh, okay, well they can fund the game now and they're not going to have any issues. Whereas like if you were to not reach the goal and on Kickstarter it'll say like this project was not funded, well now you have like a project that looks like it's not going to go through. So like yeah, I mean you probably, I mean, like most people would probably go through and try to do the project anyway, unless it was like a big project by like a company that is like, well, this is not profitable, we can't do this. But I think if it's like an indie project, people will probably find a way to do it or something similar. Simply because I mean, like it's hard to crowdfund something. You can't always be sure that something is going to either be crowdfunded or be a total dud. So I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's sorry. You
Yeah,
want to say?
I was just gonna say, setting the like goal is really important, and you probably would want to set it so that you hit the goal is just like the minimum like viable product, and then like any stretches are the like extra awesome features that you want to add in, because I mean you can always work on those later. So
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like you said, there were some scandals about crowdfunding in the past, and like you even had companies where the goal was met, or let me start from the very beginning. Like crowdfunding, I think it's a trend that's maybe let's say like 5 years old, I think. And in the beginning, you had that really big hype train, you could say, where people they backed pretty much everything that was on Kickstarter because they said, "Yeah, oh God, this is so good. I want that product, and if I buy it there, then I get it cheaper and I get it first, and it's gonna be awesome. And I know I want that product." And then it went well for some time, but of course, at some point you will have some black sheep. So where the product was like the campaign was met, but maybe the product was never released, because if you have a company and they take the money, so they complete the campaign, and then after a year they just say, yeah, sorry, we ran out of money, we are bankrupt. Then well, you don't get the product and you lost the money. So at that point, when that happened for the first time, then people realized, oh shit, it's not like you're buying a product in, let's say, in some store, but you're kind of taking the risk. You're just paying in advance, so the company can actually develop and produce the product. But if they don't finance it well enough, or maybe they mishandle the finances that they actually, like the money that they raised, then in the end, the campaign was met, but the product never came to be. And so today, so if we fast forward to today, then you really, like you said, you need to do good marketing. You need to present the idea well, so that people actually believe that you know what you're doing, and you're not saying, "Herder, I'm an engineer. I'm gonna build this. Like, I'm gonna build a 16K television, so like super high resolution television." And then maybe you studied history or something. Then of course nobody's gonna believe you that you can actually build that product. And so I think through all these kind of hiccups in the history of crowdfunding, of course you still have projects that get funded, but it's much more effort today than in the early days to get it funded, because of everything that happened. And as somebody that is thinking about crowdfunding, that's something you need to actually take into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think a big part, I mean, since for specifically video games, I think the biggest part is to show like that there's actually something there, because here are two like perspectives. I mean, a lot of people will say, well, on a crowdfunding platform, you're selling the idea that you can make it, and then other people might say, well, you're selling the fact that the product is awesome. And I think for games especially, it's both of those like are very important. People need to know, first off, they need to see in the video on the Kickstarter page that there's, awesome stuff going on, and the game's actually going to be fun and it looks good. Because games that people don't think they want to play are obviously not going to get funded. And it's also, if you need to make sure that you like present yourself as somebody who's capable, like you said, of creating that actual game. So the way to do that is obviously with showing the project. That's a part of it, and then presenting it in a way, and maybe saying like you want to give all reasons why you're actually capable of doing it. Like, maybe you're really good at programming or art or something else, and maybe you like just want the funding to hire like additional help. So like that kind of thing is what you would obviously need to figure out for your specific case, since everybody's like in a very different situation when it comes to, I guess, developing indie games. Since everybody's good at something different and all the teams are different sizes. But yeah, I think those two aspects are really what there is to focus on to make sure the Kickstarter page is not a dud, is interesting project and capable people.
I guess.
Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. What I wanted to say is that before you actually start the crowdfunding, like you said, you need to prepare a video to show like the game. So if you develop a video game, then you actually need to have something done already. So you cannot say, yeah, here I got this great idea and I'm that guy. So if you just like record yourself talking about the game, maybe you got some sketches or something, but that even with that, nobody's gonna back, because they want to They want to see like, okay, how does the game look in game? So if you have a first person shooter, then maybe they want to see some weapons or maybe some models of characters moving and jumping and stuff. Or in a strategy game, they want to see that units are actually moving and how maybe you have 1 or 2 units already done and how they shoot. And so before you actually think about crowdfunding, you need to have the project started already. So it's not like you say, okay, I got this great idea, but first let me grab all the money I need. And that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think only in the case of like some people can get away with just making a video, but like but not with the game. Like these are only big companies will do the following, where they have a prototype video, like a technical preview that's not actually the game. It's just a video that looks like it's a game, with stuff going on that you like. That's kind of a proof of like what you want the game to look like, but it's not actually at that point yet. And that's because like only some companies can get away with that because they've already proven that they're capable with all their past games. So you'll see like maybe this guy worked on like Command and Conquer, or this guy worked on Supreme Command or something like that. Like, and they have people like that in their team as they're showing this technical preview, and so you already know, well, these guys went through hell and back to make like engines and games like with really old code over the years multiple times, even not just for one game. So like, well, they're definitely capable. So some of them can get away with a technical preview, but as somebody like a small indie developer, or somebody maybe you didn't even make anything yet, you definitely want to have a game, and you'll probably not want to spend the funds on making a technical preview anyway, because you'd have a lot of effort into the computer graphics there. But but yeah, I think that's everything.
Yeah, I guess the difference is between somebody that has worked in the video game industry and somebody that like an indie game developers, that person that worked in the industry has something to lose. I think in this industry, it's more about having a good name. And so, for example, if you are a game designer and let's say you are the game designer for, like you said, Command and Conquer, Red Alert 2 or something, and then people say, "Oh yeah, I loved playing that game. The game design was really good, and I loved playing it. Like the how the game played out and how the units worked. Yeah, I'm gonna fund that because I trust this developer to actually create a good, fun game to play." If you had somebody like you, sorry, no, but somebody that is more unknown, and you say, "Yeah, I need the same amount of money, and I want to do." If you have the same project, exactly the same, then people will trust you less because they have never heard of you.
Yeah.
And even if you scam people, or maybe you say it's just a side project or something, then yes, there's not something for you to lose, because you just say, yeah, nobody really took notice of the crowdfunding campaign, and you only raised $500. Then if you didn't get much attention, then of course not many people will actually notice you failing, right? But then if you have that super famous developer, then you have that viral marketing as well, where they say, "Oh, here, look, that guy, he's creating his own RTS game with his independent development studio, and they got the guy that did the music for that game, and they have the 3D model of that other game, and the models were so high detail and stuff.
Yeah.
Then if you fail in that case, yeah, maybe those people can kind of quit their career.
Actually, yeah, I guess we could probably start talking about some like examples now, right?
Yeah, sure, go
yeah,
ahead.
so yeah, I guess we kind of covered like the viability and all that. So I think, well, like I think the big one that I always think about with Kickstarter funding is Planetary Annihilation, because that was a game with great promise that fell short, and so what happened was, they had a quite high goal, and they had I don't remember if they had a proof or actual gameplay yet, but they had a video that looked like what the game was going to be, and they had people capable that worked on like dozens of RTS games. Like they had a screen where they showed like all the games that their team had worked on. Like Subcom, I think Total Annihilation. So the big ones that are similar. I think there were like at least 10. And so yeah, it was a project where people knew that it was going to be made. And they hit stretch goals, and they got to $1 million. And some of the stretch goals were like creating naval factories. Oh, sorry, I haven't clarified what the game is. Yeah, Planetary is an RTS game. And it's just like, it's like Total Annihilation or Supreme Commander, which, like those games where there are lots and lots of units, and you build a lot of units and kind of have an economy, like a streaming economy, where your units will like build things with your resources and just build slower if your resources are like in debt. And then you build huge armies and have huge battles. But the difference with Planetary is that it was on multiple different planets, and kind of had all the land was in a 3D terrain where you could actually walk around the planet. So yeah, that's as far as I'll go in terms of explanation. Just look up videos of it to see what it's about. But yeah, it looked like it was going to be like a revival of Total Annihilation and like the new RTS game. And while it was in early access, it seemed that way. But then once they released it, it was basically just still the same like buggy problem. The UI was awful. It's still awful. It's hard to navigate through the menus. It's kind of a confusing interface where like some messages will pop up randomly, and I think in terms of like design for the units, like they're not that interesting in comparison to other RTS games. They kind of if you look at Supreme Commander, like the races are a lot more interesting in my opinion. They all have like more complete progression throughout tech, and like like old games seem to surpass it in terms of design, but Planetary had a lot of technical features done. So like to avoid just describing the entire project, the point I'm trying to make is that even like a really great professional studio, well, not the studio so much, but like professional developers in general, and a studio that had made multiple games before that worked well, and people with big names, as well as like a project that looked like it was going to work, had kind of fallen short and made a like okay game where people just did not feel like they got what they wanted, and it kind of like destroyed their name a little bit. And so yeah, if you're going to make a Kickstarter, then actually deliver on your stuff, because people will hate you if you don't. And the big thing is, like, to give you an example of how the name actually mattered, like they tried to make a game afterward with crowdfunding, and they were like, well, crowdfunding worked so well for us, and we're going to try it again. And that didn't go well because that was an RTS game that just really quickly people just posted, wow, they're just grabbing more money and they're going to have another unfinished project. And so that Kickstarter completely failed, and they decided to not go with that game, at least at the time. Which, I mean, that was just an example of how, one Kickstarter not delivering can completely destroy the stuff you want to do in the future. And now any project they will do, I mean, Uber is probably mildly tainted. There's going to be somebody saying, that they're not going to finish it or something like that, and lots of people who won't trust them to make a game anymore, just because they didn't really deliver on what they said they would.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's.
I guess it's another example would be No Man's Sky, which I guess that's a more a better known example.
Mm-hmm.
No Man's Sky was or is a game where they promised to have kind of you could say an infinite universe, and so it's said it's a sci-fi game, and yeah, they said the universe is so big you will never discover everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so they show these great looking trailers. So they say, yeah, you have something like a planet with dinosaurs, and then you have the space, the space jet in the sky flying around, and they show space battles and stuff like that. And yeah, then when the game was actually released, I think the creatures from the trailer didn't even exist in the game, and it was just kind of like a randomizer. So you could have a dinosaur with a big head but really small legs, and it was walking on the back legs, and so it had kind of arms and legs, but it looked really strange. And I think then they said you could see people in game, but the chance was really low. And then on day 1 or day 2, you had people standing on exactly the same planet and spot, and they couldn't see each other. So people were really pissed about that. And I remember they also had, I think it was in Europe, where they had the box of the game, and then they just put a sticker on top of the printed labels like violence and netplay stuff. So you have these symbols, and they just put on a different sticker, I think with a lower age rating, and they removed the multiplayer online part.
Yeah.
something like that. So in that case, even after the game launched, people were so disappointed. I remember that so many people actually refunded the game, where they said, no, that's not what was promised. That's not what they have shown in trailers. They were lying about game features. And today, if you buy the game online, for example on Steam, then you can play for up to 2 hours. So if you play more than 2 hours, you cannot refund. But so you can play the game for a bit. And I guess if a developer is lying so blatantly about pretty much everything, then you just say, okay, yeah, give me back my money. This is a joke.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
It was a pretty...
even though the sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that was a really extreme example where they just like didn't deliver like 50% of the things that they said they would. Anyway, but continue.
Yeah, of course. It was funded really well, and but in the end they just couldn't deliver what they promised. So they promised too much, and I think another good example is Mighty Number 9, which, if you know Mega Man, the Mega Man series, was, I think that it was the same director, so he wanted to do another Mega Man game, and he came up with Mighty Number 9. But then in the end, the gameplay was not as fans expected to be, and then so they, well, I think that producer even said, yeah, better than nothing, right? So, even though the game was not what people expected, it was like, yeah, at least you got a game, and
you should be grateful.
Yeah, so if you have people like that are, like you said, they are known and famous, and they get crowdfunded, but still fail to deliver, that's a big problem for pretty much everyone, because people will be more skeptical to back projects or products in the future. Also another problem that some developers have is they, like you talked about, stretch goals. So, like you said, sorry, if you have a game and you say we need $500,000, then that's the basic game. But what developers often do is they say, okay, if we reach $600,000, then then we add another main character that you can play, and that's Steve. Or if we reach 750,000, then you get an alternate story mode, or we are going to add a new race to the strategy game and stuff. And I cannot remember any names of games that have had a problem with that, but I know that I read articles about games promised, like they reached much more than the amount they asked for, and they had so many stretch goals, and then in the end they couldn't deliver the stretch goals in time. I mean, if you crowdfund a game, then you say we want to be done by January 2019. But if you put in stretch goals, so you need to implement a new main character, and you need to implement like a new race and a new story mode, and you need to implement a map editor for everyone and stuff, or something like that, then, well, you got more time, more money, but you don't have more time to actually create everything. So in the end, maybe it would have been actually better to not get that much money, or to just say, okay, we will have these three stretch goals, because we will actually be able to create that stuff in time. Then you can either say no more stretch goals, or you say, okay, everything from here on 1 year later, or half a year later.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so just don't go overboard with promises, because the the developers from No Man's Sky or Planetary Annihilation, they kind of got they got the experience of how it is to promise too much and not be able to deliver everything that they promised.
Yeah, and I think on the terms of what was it? Wow, my mind just blanked. But I think I was going to mention something about.
I guess for the long term, right? If you develop,
yeah.
like you have the first game and it's funded well, but you fail to deliver, then, if you fail to deliver, then either you just produce the games on your own from your own money that you made with the game, or I doubt you won't. I don't think you will get money from a crowdfunding. From a crowdfunding money raiser again.
I think, yeah, I was going to mention in terms of the stretch goals, like video games are hard to plan, and the plans like always change. There's never a plan that's going to actually completely work out, and so you need to be good at planning and at replanning, and so you need to leave a lot of excess time for a stretch goal so that you know you're going to be ready to make it. And you also need to know, like, if you don't want to make a certain feature but you want to include it, I mean, there is the option of hiring like contractors to do stuff, and so you just need to put the money and the schedule for the stretch goal like in the Kickstarter, so that well, I could hire contractors to do this part of it and that part of it, and like maybe they'll take this much time, so I'll add on like say 2 or 3 months to it just in case, just to give it like a deadline of when it's going to be released, and that kind of thing. I mean, like I think a big part of the Kickstarter is with funding just for hiring people. Like, I mean, with the game, everything is like almost everything is creative work. I mean, like you can argue programming is not creative work, but I mean, everything with a game is just physical labor. That's like, I guess, physical in terms of pressing keys and drawing stuff, etc. But it's all like work that people have to put in, and so it's not like you need to really pay for anything physical other than maybe you want a better computer or maybe you want to pay for an office. But I mean, beyond that, like, it's pretty much paying people's like costs so that you can hire them either contractors or like salary, so that they can stay to work on the game, and then figure out whatever else afterward. Because so I mean, you want to know that you can hire the right people like with the money anyway, or just don't ask for money that you don't need, because well, that's just the dishonesty will bite you in the ass. So anyway,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. If your product is created so well that people actually say, yeah, it was worth it. I mean, you can take more money if you, for example, if you plan pretty conservatively. So you say, okay, we really need 50,000 to finish. Then if you get 100,000 and maybe the stretch goal will only cost you 20,000 on top, so you kind of have you gained $30,000. But if the product is done so well that they say, yeah, I don't mind, so like the $30,000 were invested really well, maybe you can say, okay, we're gonna support the game a bit longer. We're gonna create patches for a longer period of time or something similar. So if you get too much money, it doesn't mean like, oh, yeah, I'll go cash grab and I'm gonna go buy me a house on the at the beach or something like that. You know, um, you can actually put the money to good use. I guess when you do crowdfunding, an important thing is transparency as well.
Yeah.
Because if you show, okay, this is gonna cost this much and this is gonna cost this much, and we are going to, from the stretch goal, we're gonna take just $2,000 for ourselves, and 18,000 is pretty much just paying for the stretch goal and the extra work. Then I guess people won't complain. But if you just say, stretch goal $20,000, one additional model, or maybe a new skin in the game, then people would think, okay, that's not really worth $20,000. I guess these guys are just grabbing the money out of our pockets now.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's true. It helps in terms of like marketing as well, because you look like you have your stuff together if you actually have a bunch of like goals and milestones where you say, well, this one's going to cost this much, and like say a certain piece of work is going to cost that much, and like when you expect to deliver it, like maybe a time range, that like then you really look like you know that you can finish the project and it will be done in that period of time. So yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Did I mention the article about that I read about like crowdfunding all your games as like a test, or did I not talk
No,
about
you have not mentioned that before. We only talked about games that were crowdfunded and then failed to deliver.
Okay, well, I wanted to say, I just wanted to say that it was interesting. Like, there was an article that was written about like saying, to avoid indie game flops. It mentioned, it was a very strong opinion. It like said, like it was called, I think, titled "The Cure for Indie Game Flops" or something like that. And it was basically saying, crowdfund every game. So that if it fails, then you know that you need to change something. But if it works, then you know that your game is profitable. And I thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about it. It's like, in theory, I think that's correct, but like if it's, unless it's like something creative, then it's probably not going to be crowdfunded. Considering, like I wouldn't try to crowdfund like a mobile game or a clicker game, like because that's not something that people are thinking, oh man, that's revolutionary and I really want to play it. That's the kind of thing that people are thinking, oh, that's out there, I can get it when it's on sale, and I can play it like in between like queues when I'm searching for a ranked match or something like that in like League. So like you kind of, there's kind of a line to draw with crowdfunding. I think it's like, yeah, it's a really good idea in general, but you can easily do it wrong, and you don't want to do it with the wrong projects, I think, because like it's kind of just going to waste your time. Like if I set up, you can look up Rebound on Steam, like that's one game that I made. If I attempted to make a Kickstarter for that, well, obviously it would not be kickstarted unless it was like $100 or $10, which would kind of be pointless, and and I would have now wasted all the time trying to run a Kickstarter campaign for a clicker game that, like it's just faster to just make the thing and sell it. Like, so yeah. So I think if it's a creative game, then that's like a pretty good strategy to crowdfund it, not only like to get the money, but also so that you're sure that people are actually interested, like in this like creative indie game you're making. But if it's like, like I said, something small that really just does not need crowdfunding, and you're like just want extra money, I guess maybe to pay for some extra assets, I'd recommend avoiding it, just because it can kind of just waste your time. But yeah, I think it's a good strategy in general.
Also, I think if you try a Kickstarter for a game, and then it fails, then it doesn't make much sense to do a Kickstarter or crowdfunding again, because then this game will have like the stigma of let's say you ask for $10,000 and you only raised $150, then even if we work on it some more, people will probably say, yeah, it does not make sense to back it. It won't reach the targeted amount anyway. And so like you said, crowdfunding can be a good thing, but maybe it would have been just better to complete the game and just sell it instead of doing a crowdfunder. Because even if you continue to work on it and you complete it, then maybe people would still say, it failed on Kickstarter, there's no interest. Yeah, nobody's gonna play that online. If it's an online game, then maybe it hurts you more than actually help you.
I don't know. I think that's a good question, because on the other hand, it could even just raise publicity, the fact that it's on Kickstarter, even if it failed. I mean, I don't know if it's worse for the name or better, but I think it's something to keep in mind. I think that if the game is good, then it would outweigh the failed Kickstarter. But it's hard to say if the game is good if it did fail a Kickstarter. So,
but then you will have to change a lot, I think.
Yeah, probably. I think because it depends on how the Kickstarter is run. Because if the Kickstarter was just run horribly, then maybe the game is good. But I mean, if you ran the Kickstarter really well, then maybe the game is just not viable and people don't really want to play it. Because I mean, the reality is like, there are games that can be pretty cool, but people just won't play them for whatever reason.
But then you actually know, okay, maybe I should not invest any more time into that game.
Yeah.
Or maybe you could say, I'm just gonna finish it real quick. Then maybe I can make a few bucks and then be done with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One thing we have not talked about yet is actually the financial part of crowdfunding platforms. So, of course, if you start a crowdfunding campaign, it's on a website that companies run. So they also need to be paid, kind of, or you need to pay for the service. And in that case, Indiegogo takes 5% of the money raised.
Mm-hmm.
So they take 5% and 3% if it was raised on a third-party website. So then it would be 8%. And so 8% sounds like a lot. So if you for example raise $100,000, then you kind of have to pay $8,000 to Indiegogo, or at least $5,000. But if everyone would donate or pay via a third-party platform, then it would be up to $8,000. And for Kickstarter, it was also 5%, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was 5%, and they had like 3 to 5% for processing fees. So either way, it's a minimum 8%.
Yeah, so I guess maybe Indiegogo would be a bit cheaper, but Indiegogo is a bit less known than Kickstarter.
That's what I thought.
So you also, when you think about how much money you need actually from crowdfunding, then you need to also include the fees and the money that the platform will actually take away from you, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else? I guess else financially there's not that much else involved. Like I said, if the crowdfunding fails, then there are no fees for anyone,
Yeah.
because you don't get money and the backers don't get a product, so they get their money back. So then there are no fees included. Else, I guess I would just recommend taking a look at crowdfunding websites if you are interested in that, and some projects that people run and how much they ask for. I guess, also think about the background of the people running the campaigns. Like you said, it depends on how known the person is. Else, crowdfunding can be a good and a bad thing. Like, we talked about it for nearly an hour now, so in the end it's up to our listeners if they want to start a crowdfunding campaign, or even if they want to be on the other side of the crowdfunding campaign as the person backing the project. You should not forget that you're not buying stakes in a company. You just buy the product in advance.
Yeah.
And like I said, if the company goes bankrupt, tough luck. Because if it goes bankrupt, then the company stops to exist at some point.
Yeah.
So maybe some assets will be sold, maybe the IP, and maybe then you don't get the game or the product you backed, and then you maybe lost $200 or $300, or in case of the laptop you lost $450.
Yeah, so you just want to know the risk you're taking when you. I mean, it's kind of like pre-ordering, but more generous, I guess. So I mean, you kind of want to know the risk if you are to fund a Kickstarter project. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, because essentially what you're doing with a video game is you're paying someone to make something that you want to experience in the future. So I mean, just know that like when you're doing that, you're taking a risk and relying on somebody else to do something that you want, I guess. So
also take a look at the date that somebody's going to finish the product or the project. For me, sometimes you have these great hardware projects. For example, somebody wants to create like a notebook where you just hook up your smartphone and then you can use the notebook. So you use the power of the processing power of your smartphone to power the notebook. So you just have everything shown on the notebook, and you can type and have the touchpad and stuff. Yeah, great. But then you take a look at the estimated time when they finish, and it's 2 years in the future. And then, sometimes I just think, okay, so in 2 years, maybe there's something better on the market actually, or maybe it's nothing special anymore. Then, I guess that's also something for somebody as a game developer, where you say, okay, how long are the customers actually willing to wait until we finish the game? If it's 5 years, I guess not many people are willing to wait for that long.
Yeah.
So maybe something like 1 year, maybe 2 years, but 2 years, so much can change in 2 years. uh, or maybe there's a big game studio that just copies the like your game, or like the general idea of the game, and then tough luck, EA is gonna push its game on the market, and you are effed.
Screwed.
You're just effed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, it's actually something interesting to think about. Like, not to be pessimistic, but I mean, most of the Kickstarter examples that I think of, like, they are like problematic. Like, I paid for like a hardware thing before that was like a laser engraver, and I mean that turned out to be like very bad quality. And I mean, there's a lot. I mean, and all the big ones I can think of are like Limit Theory. It took too long because it was one guy. I mean, and it's still not out, and that was funded in like 2012. So now it's like 5 years since that Kickstarter was launched, and it was delayed like a lot. But I mean, so just, I mean, it's a great, wonderful like looking game, but it's it's not out. So, and it wasn't out by the time it was expected to be. So I mean, that's like, and I mean, like, think about it, like Planetary, Human Resources, Limit Theory. I mean, all the examples off the top of my head, they had some huge like issues after they were funded, and they either like didn't come out, or they didn't get the features that were promised. But so that's why with crowdfunding, you have to be like smarter than most people. I think the reason why they fail a lot is because you can kind of think that you're safe now that that you got the funding ahead of time, so maybe you get lazy with the project. So I think that might be the reason why. So like, you probably just want to keep in mind that you you need to finish the project, because I mean, that's the reason you ran the Kickstarter in the first place. It wasn't for the money. It was because you wanted to make a video game and maybe get money as well. Because otherwise, if you just want to get money, then obviously you wouldn't be in the games industry unless you're an idiot. So I mean, just don't forget, you want to make sure that you don't forget the reason why you were crowdfunding and developing the game in the first place, because I think that's what is most detrimental to the projects.
Yeah, I think so as well. I thought about something, but I lost my train of thought. So I just can't remember what I was thinking about. There was one thing I really wanted to say, but damn. I guess we just call it quits for today then.
Yeah.
At least I don't have anything else to say.
I covered everything I think I wanted to. So
yeah, me as well. So I hope you got a better overview about crowdfunding, and maybe you got a bit more critical about it if you are a user. Like if you are a backer, then maybe you think about you think about which projects to invest in, actually, or maybe a bit more. And on the other side, if you want to start a crowdfunding campaign, then I hope we gave you a bit of inspiration how you can make people actually want to give you money for your product. Of course, like Bilal said, it doesn't. If you have the money, it doesn't mean that the product is going to be as good as you wanted it to be. But just don't stop trying at some point.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for today about our crowdfunding episode. And any final comments? Yeah, we're all right. Yeah, we are just both done. All right, then. As usual, feel free to comment, retweet, Tell your friends, and I hope you will listen to our next episode next week again. So have a nice week.